morning. I'm Joseph Rosales, and this is Business in the New Normal. I'm joined here by my co-host, Ike Devji. Good morning, Ike.
Good morning.
And we are Business in the New Normal, where we share balanced information to help businesses all across the country to do more than survive, but thrive in these very challenging times that we find ourselves in. Each week, as you know, we're joined by a expert in a particular area of business, ranging from rebranding to pivoting to legal issues to sanitation, lots of different issues that are surrounding many of us in business. And again, our purpose here is to share balanced information so you as a business owner, as a professional, can make more informed decisions for you, your business, your employees, and your family. So with that, I'm going to say again, good morning, Ike, and see what's on Ike's mind. Mike is a wealth management or asset protection attorney here in Scottsdale, and has just a wealth of knowledge and is constantly reading and studying up on all the things that are going on with the economy and business all across the country. So Ike, good morning, and what's going on in your world?
Good morning, Joseph. It's good to be with you again. Well, we're working on a lot of things, as we always are, since we work with a really diverse group of people, whether they're professionals or executives or business owners and entrepreneurs. One of the things that's on our mind this week, like everyone else, is the election. And for an asset protection attorney, obviously the issue here is, does the election create risk for the people I serve and their businesses? And the answer, unfortunately, is yes. In fact, I have a new article that was published early this morning that talks about election-related and disruption to businesses. There are about 10 states that are on high alert. 5 states should be on high alert. Another 5 states have been identified as having an elevated risk of violence around the election or some other disruption, right? So it's not just violence, but it could be anything from having roads closed, having cities shut down, having protests, having acts of violence. All of those things come into play for business owners who need to manage these risks. Remember, it's not just the risks that are inside your business that we're worried about. It's external forces that could affect your profitability, your safety, the safety of your staff, the safety of your customers. So we're looking at those issues and telling people to be aware of their geographical risk. For instance, are you in one of the states that should be on high alert, or one of the other 5 states that should be on elevated alert? Are you in a part of your city close to something that creates conflict or controversy? Are you near a polling place? Are you near a government building that may be the source of a protest? Should you take extra precautions on the 3rd or before and after the 3rd for a few days? Wow. Should you consider that in how you're scheduling your meetings? Will your business be accessible? Will the streets be open, right? All of these things are things that we're looking at, and things that people don't normally think of, right? When most people think about asset protection, the only thing they think about is lawsuits. But we're worried about any risk that could disrupt your success. And that's one of the things that we're talking to people about this week.
Wow. Yeah. Things that we took for granted for most of our lifetimes are now different. And there are some people out there that, there are many people that don't even like the word business in the new normal. They just want it to go back to the old normal. And I don't know that happens anytime soon, but helping people to be prepared, helping them to be informed, helping them to be at least aware and more balanced in their approach as they move through their business weeks and months and as we move forward all together. Yeah, that's interesting. So how do they get in touch with that information about those points about how they can, questions they should be asking or how they should plan?
Well, I have a new article that was published this morning in Physicians Practice, which is a medical journal. Okay. And while I wrote it for medical practices, which are at an increased risk because of the politicization of the COVID-19 crisis, it really applies to every business as well. The title of the article is Election Risk Management for Medical Practices. Okay. And today practice. But as I said, many of the points and the details, the list of the states, the list of the insurance issues, the list of some of the securities issues that I've provided really do apply to everybody. Obviously, you can check with your state and local governments, look at local resources, even trade associations, chambers of commerce, even landlords in big commercial buildings like office buildings are providing guidance to folks. So there's lots of guidance available out there. And if you're in a city where you think there may be an issue, even if it's just a disruption, you can easily search online using the name of your city and maybe phrases like election precautions and things like that as well.
Okay, good, good. Well, thank you for sharing that, because it's always interesting to me that, we're all somewhat myopic just by nature. We focus on our lane, we focus on what we do, our families, our businesses, our life. And when you expand outside your normal, frame of vision, you see things happening that most people don't even know are happening, or go some of the things that you shared this morning. Which kind of leads me into my thing I wanted to share this morning, and that's guarding our mindset. In my most recent book, The Leader of You, we talk about how perception plus perspective equals mindset, and how your perception on things definitely influences your perspective, and your perspective eventually develops your mindset. And it's interesting because last night I was like normal, flipping between CNN and Fox News to get both ends of the scale, like both ends of the story. And Justice Barrett now was confirmed last night, and I'll tell you, when you flip between the two channels, one she's an angel, one she's the devil. How can that be? And I always say there's three sides to every story. Well, one side thinks what the other side thinks, and the truth in the middle. And so I was thinking last night, wow, if somebody just watches one channel, say you're a Fox News or you're a CNN person on either end of the extreme, you get a very different picture of what's going on out there. And I learned, months ago, during the beginning of the pandemic, to watch both channels, and I literally flipped between them to hear the same story from different perspectives. And it reminded me that we all have to guard our mindset. We all have to be informed. We have to be balanced. We have to be aware that many of our news programs are not news programs anymore. They're really opinion programs. There's somebody sharing their opinion in a very strategic, very professional, very effective way that influences people to think a certain way. And we have to be careful as professionals, as people who are trying to do the right thing all the time. Our listeners need to be balanced. So I thought about that because there's a left and there's a right and there's a middle. And then there's variations of that middle too. So just be careful. Today, as you're listening to the news, as you're walking through your day, just be balanced and make sure you're seeing both sides of the equation and both sides of the story, and maybe that helps you be more balanced in your perspective, and therefore your mindset.
I think that's a great point. I mean, we talk about things like confirmation bias, and we tend to gravitate to news sources that support whatever our pre-existing suppositions and biases are. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that we talk about these things in many different terms, ranging from humility to intellectual curiosity. And I couldn't agree with you more that you need to be informed by more than one source on a variety of issues. Obviously politics has brought that to the forefront. And you have to be willing to accept, in some cases, that some of the sources that you like are providing information that is just flatly wrong in some cases. And so that, I think, is also difficult for people when it's a source that they've trusted, whatever that source is, whatever that source's angle is. Sometimes that source is just going to not be telling the truth or is going to be incorrect. And the only way you're going to know that is by taking that broad approach that you encourage, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we're going to move on to our guest here in a minute. But it's interesting because we live in a time where you really have to ask questions. You really have to at least understand what the source is. We used to kid, not long ago that everything you read on the internet must be true, right? Well, we know that's not true, and now it's like that with TV too. So it's interesting. That's what I wanted to share today. It's an interesting thing, and I talk about it, like I said, in my book. And people can go to theleaderofyou.com and download the ebook and buy the digital course or whatever. But we need to be balanced, and we're in a very big time of unbalance right now. Uncertainty is rampant in so many areas, from the virus to politics to social unrest to the economy to kids going to school, not going to school. I mean, we are steeped in uncertainty, and that causes people to want to latch onto one opinion or the other. And usually we want to latch onto the opinion that kind of substantiates what we already feel, but that may or may not be right. So that being said, I am so excited that we get to have you as our guest today. We had a last minute cancellation, and you stepped in, and you're going to be sharing about your business. And for those of you who have been following us for months now, you know that Ike Devji is a asset protection attorney here in Scottsdale. He works with clients all over the country. And has a deep knowledge of how people can better protect themselves and their businesses in all times, but especially in these challenging times. And I wanted to just say, welcome to the program, guest Ike Devji.
Thank you.
So, it's interesting because I've known you a while now. We first met back in January on the radio, and we've developed a friendship and this partnership since then. And you've been doing this a long time. How long you been studying this area of the law and practicing?
I've practiced exclusively in this area for 17 years now. And it is the sole focus of my practice, which, as you said, encompasses a whole bunch of different types of people.
So I have a question for you. What is asset protection? What does that mean? I kind of get an idea, but I want to make sure that I and the listeners are clear on what asset protection is.
That's a great place to start. I'm glad you asked that question. Asset protection means a lot of different things to different people, and professionals in different fields have used that phrase increasingly over the last 10 years, especially, to describe whatever they do. So you'll see people who sell life insurance talking about asset protection. You see people who sell commercial and personal liability insurance talking about asset protection. And you see it lots of different places. From my perspective as an attorney, what asset protection is using a combination of the law, legal structures, exemption planning, risk management, and insurance to make sure that the business owner or entrepreneur or any successful person's success is as predictable and safe as possible. And so that, unfortunately, I wish that I had a corner on this where I had some sort of magic box that could sell people and, hey, all you need to do is buy this one thing and you've got asset protection. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So it's it's an intentional combination of several different sciences and looking at risk management, looking at the law, looking at how you're holding assets from different perspectives that all comes together. To work to make sure that whatever you've been fortunate enough to accumulate and your future success is yours.
Okay. Well, why did you pick this area of the law?
First and foremost, I think it's because I love seeing people succeed. Right? Lawyers wear many different hats. Some of us get to help people. Some of us take things away. Some of us from people right on the litigation side. Some of us help with transactions or intellectual property or with domestic relations, family law, right? There's so many different areas of the law. The law is now, in some respects, as specialized as medicine. But really, I picked this area of the law because I the people who I protect, right? I come from an entrepreneurial family of business owners. I come from a family that has a bunch of doctors and has a bunch of executives in it and has a bunch of people who have worked hard. My friends, my family members, the people that I work for as an attorney, that in common, that they have had some combination of education, hard work, good luck, all of those things that come into making people successful. And I decided many years ago, when I started as a young attorney and on the litigation side of the fence, where I used to sue people, that I would rather help people and make their future and their success more predictable than take things away from them. So that's really how it started.
So, yeah, I like what you said about that. There are so many different areas of the law. It's like medicine. It's very specialized now. And just going to a general practitioner may have its time and place, but when you have need for a heart surgery, you don't go to a general practitioner. You go to somebody, that's what they specialize in, and that's what they do all the time. Ike, I've heard you say many times in conversations with guests that we've had and others that have been on the program, you talked about defensive planning. What is that, and why is it important?
Well, look, Joseph, there's a whole industry out there that you see advertised on TV every night, as one example, that's dedicated to taking money away from people, right? And I don't want to pick on personal injury attorneys, but that's one visible example that everybody can relate to, right? When you turn on on your TV every night, you see a whole bunch of people advertising lawsuits, right? Whether it is a drug lawsuit or a product liability lawsuit, or most often it's a personal injury. How many times have you seen an ad from somebody like me?
Never.
Never. Right. So there is a massive trillion-dollar industry dedicated to separating people from their wealth. And it is important, just as you take responsibility for protecting your health, you take responsibility for locking the door and setting your alarm, you take responsibility for locking your car when you have things in it. It is a reality that you need to take responsibility proactively to protect the fruits of your labor and your success. So defensive planning takes many forms. It could be setting up the right kind of trust to put a certain asset or group of assets in. It could be setting up a corporation or an LLC to make an asset or a business legally distinct from you and your family, to separate that liability. It could be working with somebody to make sure that your business has an employment manual in place to help manage employee lawsuits. Or it could be something as simple as working with an insurance expert, like one that we've had on the program in the past and had a conversation with, to make sure that you're properly insured, right? There are people who want to have, and what they are advertising on TV in those commercials is your money, right? In a wreck, need a check, that's your money that they're advertising. So we are at a point in business where this defensive planning, just like tax planning, just like succession planning, just like risk management planning, is just a necessary and regular part of business. But unfortunately, most people are not aware of the need or their own ability to do that.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it seems like many people call you, and I think you shared this with me recently, many people call you after it's too late, after they're being sued, after they've had the loss. And I remember when we built our home in New Jersey. We moved here 3 years ago, but we built our first home there. And I'm having an alarm system put in. Wow, we don't need an alarm system. We're fine. No. Let me tell you what's going to happen. We're not going to get broke into and then put the alarm system in later after everything's gone. We'll put it in now. And we did.
And that's one of the things that motivates people to get an alarm system, is that they have been robbed.
Yeah. It's too late. Everything's gone. Yeah.
Well, and I'm really glad that up, because that's probably one of the most important things that we can share with folks today, is the fact that asset protection planning, the defensive planning you're talking about, is sensitive, but people don't think. If you get served, right? If you get a lawsuit notice in the mail or somebody walks up to you and serves you, you immediately react and get an attorney in place and start to react and retain defense counsel and start to do those things, right? And because you know that there's a time sensitivity to it, the same time sensitivity applies to asset protection planning.
Okay.
In many cases, you are both you are legally and ethically prohibited from implementing asset protection after the exposure. So we are in an odd position in my business where we can only help people protect themselves from a problem they don't have yet. So you can't call an asset protection attorney after the car accident, after you lose a patient, after you've been served with a lawsuit. And in fact, you do to be defensible, and in many cases even legal. It can be both civilly and criminally actionable if you do it late. So you have every right to do it under blue skies and very few rights to make changes after the problem occurs.
Wow. Yeah, proactive versus reactive, right? So, so what kinds of people do you protect, and what are some of the tools you use?
Well, those are two good broad questions. We protect people who have a lot of things in common, but it's a very diverse group of people. So as I said, they've worked hard, they've been successful, they have significant assets, or they're on their way to significant assets. And, you know, it could be a new business owner, it could be a baby doctor right out of school, it could be somebody who just bought their first franchise, or it could be somebody that has 100 restaurant franchise units, right?
Yeah.
And there's a huge disparity in wealth between those people, but they all share many of the same risks, and they have many of the same things in common. So about half the people I protect are medical professionals by number, but certainly not by net worth. So doctors obviously have significant personal liability and professional liability that they're concerned about. The other half of the book of my clients is what I loosely refer to as business owners, and that means business owners, founders, entrepreneurs. It could be a professional athlete. It could be a C-level executive who's been very successful. And many of these folks make money in one industry or in a profession and then make more money or build larger wealth somewhere else. Okay. So for instance, maybe the physician who's a surgeon now also has a very significant real estate portfolio, right? So it's interesting to see that people who are successful and dynamic often generate wealth in one area and spin that wealth off into success in many others where they need protection as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, in terms of some of the tools that we use lots of different tools. It might be something as simple and everyday as an LLC or a limited partnership or a revocable trust for estate planning, which doesn't provide asset protection, or irrevocable trusts. There are various specialized trusts that we use for wealth transfer that also provide asset protection to both the grantors and the beneficiaries, especially right now where we have changes in tax and estate tax exemptions pending. And in some cases, the tools we use are offshore tools that give us the highest degree of protection.
Wow, lots of options, and I guess that's why people need to at least first know what those options are, that they even exist, and then which one applies to them in their particular situation.
That's really important. Unfortunately, what happens in many cases with consumers is sometimes people find a solution and then go looking for a problem, right? So we want the tools that anyone is using to be a good fit for their fact pattern, for their net worth, for their liquidity needs. So sometimes the client will call me or a prospective client and say, hey, I read about this kind of trust on the internet and I want one of those. And I'll say, well, wait a minute. Let's talk about your facts first and see, then let's determine which tool applies. I get that you read that article in Forbes or wherever you saw it and it sounded very exciting, but maybe that's not a fit for you. Or maybe it's more expensive, or maybe it's too restrictive in terms of how you can use that money. Okay. So like I said, there are lots of good ideas out there. The question is it a good idea for you?
Yeah. It's interesting because we do the same thing in our business too, where, sometimes we get calls from prospective clients and they go, I want to start here. And okay, great, that's good. But let's go back to the beginning and ask some of the foundational questions to see what your challenges and opportunities really are. Because if it's strict sales, that's great. I want to increase sales revenue, but let's talk about all the foundational pieces that build on that. And sometimes we find that it's really a recruiting problem that they have that's going to eventually have a positive influence on the sales revenues. But we need people, and we need the right people. We need the right training. We need the right onboarding. We need the right coaching. I mean, there's a bunch of pieces that build. So it's very similar in understanding the assessment side of it. What are the facts? I love the word facts. So what are some of the risk factors of those who need asset protection, and really who needs it?
That's a great question. So let's start with the last part of your question first. Who needs it?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. The question is, what do you need and how much do you need to do, right? So that new baby doctor that I talked about right out of school
Mm-hmm.
is going to need a couple of basic things to get started that are going to look very different from what their 55-year-old peer who has been earning for 30 years, who has a 7 or 8 figure net worth, who has a diverse investment portfolio, that has money in the bank, that has a bunch of equity in their house, that maybe owns some investment real estate, that maybe owns a share of another company that they've invested in, some other business. Those two people are going to look very different in what their needs are, but both of them need to do something. So that's a baseline question is, maybe it's something as simple as, hey, you need to get an estate plan in place to protect your wife and children, and you need to have a $1 million umbrella on your car, and you need to have some disability insurance because your greatest asset is your ability to earn for the next 35 years, right? Maybe I'm talking to a 30-year-old physician. Right. And so that is one fact pattern that we'd look at. In terms of risk factors, everybody has some risk factors, right? And some of them are very obvious. If you're a doctor, you're worried about medical malpractice, right? If you're a lawyer, you're worried about malpractice. If you're a builder, you're worried about a construction defect claim. If you own a trucking company, you're worried about your specific risks about, oh my God, what if there's an accident with one of my drivers or one of my vehicles, right? So those risks, I think, are the obvious ones. And what I warn people is risk myopia. You need to think beyond just the obvious risks that your business presents to the more general and everyday risks that you may or may not even be aware of, or that you may take for granted. So, there's some basic risks. Do you own a home? Do you drive a car? Do you have kids? Do you have employees? Do you own assets like real estate that generate liability, right? So real estate, an income producing real estate asset like an apartment building or a rental house, is a fabulous asset. We all want those assets, but we've got to hold those assets in a way where if there's a problem, asset and its liability doesn't affect us personally and the other wealth that we've accumulated. Do you serve on the board of a public or private corporation? Do you have toys or engage in activities that could create liability, right? Do you take people to the lake on your boat on the weekends? Do you have a vacation home or a cabin that your teenage or college age kids use that you are responsible for? So there are lots of different risks out there, and we look at as many of those as possible. One big one that people are overlooking right now is the risk of selling your business, right? We have a whole nation of successful boomer age business owners, and now even younger, who are reaching success, reaching a point in where their business, where they can walk away from their business with significant wealth. One big risk that people are overlooking and seem to forget is a lot of people think when they sell their business, that risk ends, right? I operated this company for all these years, and now that I'm selling it, I don't have any risk anymore, right? Well, you're more collectible than ever. You have more cash than ever. You have maybe an estate tax exposure you didn't have before. And a whole bunch of people know when any big deal gets done. And that means the people in your office, the people who used to work for you, your partners, your former partners, your executives, everybody knows. And a lot of people think that nobody knows I'm selling my company for $20 million. I'll tell you what, a whole lot more people know than you think. And one of the biggest risks is the buyer, right? Because if the buyer isn't able to do what the seller did and can't make the business run the same way, they are going to look for a way and a reason to make themselves whole again, right? They're going to go to their own team of lawyers and they're going to come up with some excuse, some reason, whether it's legitimate or not, some act or omission on the part of the seller as to why they aren't successful. And they're going to either want to undo the deal or get some of their money back or withhold some of the payments they still owe you. So that's a big risk that many people are overlooking as well. So when we talk to asset protection clients, we try and not just look at, great, you're a doctor, let's talk about malpractice. No, that's the obvious one. We're going to take that one for granted, and we're not even going to mention that in our conversations for the most part, because we understand that's there. We're going to look for what else do we need to be aware of, and what safeguards do we have in place to protect us from that, including how the assets, how we're insured, and how we are keeping people and controlling behavior that leads to liability for us.
Well, it's a very integrated and complex, potentially complex set of solutions that need to be at least looked at objectively. And I love that. I love that you do that. It's one of the things I enjoy about you and our friendship is you're not just a professional expert person in your field. You think through things very well. And I think there are a lot of people that do what you do that might not have that resource of being able to think through things and ask those questions and project out what could happen. Because, I always say if you can deal with the worst case scenario, at least you're prepared. But most people don't even see the worst case scenario until it's too late. So thank you for sharing
Kind of our
that.
motto. It's hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah, right.
Most of the people that we work with sleep well at night. And is it, some people might think it's overkill or it's erring on the side of caution, but I would much rather err on the side of caution than be put in a position where we can't do what we should have.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that you're going to have people that are listening that would love to get in touch with you. And I know we're going to have your contact information at the end of, at the end of the session on a slide, but, is there something you'd like to share with people that would help them make that decision, maybe to look into this with you or another attorney in the process?
Yeah. There is a ton of educational information on my websites. I have two websites. One is called arizonawealthlaw.com or azwealthlaw.com. The other one is proassetprotection.com, proassetprotection.com. And that website has a tab called Articles and Education. Okay. And it is literally, it's got a sample of the work that I've produced and the issues I've helped address for clients for the last 17 years.
Okay.
So we've got a really good index there. It's all free information. You don't have to log in. You don't have to give me any personal information. It's just there. And I encourage people to take advantage of it. It's certainly not complete, but it's got it really gives you a great start, and it covers a lot of different issues from, why do you use this kind of trust, or how does the insurance company work, or what are the insurance issues that a business owner needs to be aware of. So we've got lots of a wide range of information there, and it's there to help people.
Okay. Well, Ike, thank you so much for taking the time to be the guest speaker today. You share a tremendous amount of resources with our listeners, and I hope that people see the value in being a little more proactive and at least exploring where their weaknesses might be in their asset protection program for their family, their business, their life. And would reach out to you if they have any questions. I know your email will be posted at the end as well. They can go to your website. They can reach out to you directly on phone. And that's really that's really important, especially in these times where we don't know what's coming. We don't know what the next piece of the puzzle is going to look like for many of us. And being prepared and being protected is certainly an important aspect of anybody's wealth management program, whether it's 100,000 or 100 million or anything in between. So I thank you for being the guest today.
Well, thank you. It was good to be with you as always, Joseph. And I'm glad we got to talk through some of these issues. Hopefully, it helps a few folks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, again, this is the end of our episode, and I wanted to just say that we trust that this information is helpful to you, and we believe that if you are informed and you're prepared, you're going to be more diligent in your approach to your business, to your people, to your opportunities, and again, we talk about thriving. There are so many opportunities today to thrive, not just survive. But you really got to think through those, and you got to be exposed to them. And so if you have a topic, by the way, that you would like us to cover in Business in the New Normal, shoot me an email. My email address will be at the end of the program as well, in one of the slides. I'd be happy to chat with the experts that we know to address that topic. Or if you feel like you would be a great guest for us on the program, shoot me an email and I'll set up an interview with you, and we can talk about what you might share, because we're all about resources and helping people to make better choices during these very challenging business and personal times that we're all facing. So with that, I will say thank you from Ike Devji, my co-host. And again, I am Joseph Rosales, and this is Business in the New Normal. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.